Hello, my name is Sam Rizzo, and today we're going to be interviewing a good friend of mine, uh, Michael Kaplan, retired major in the Air Force, and a school buddy of mine. Today is January 17th, 2023, and we're going to do this recording on behalf of the Thomas Warren Museum and Library and the Madison Old Township Historical Society. So, Michael, welcome. It's been a long time since we've actually talked in person.
Yeah, last time I think was our class reunion.
I think so. I'm glad we reconnected at that.
Absolutely.
So just to start off with a little background, you and I went to, I know, junior high and high school together. We attended Madison Township High School, but I don't really know. Did you attend school in Madison Township prior to that?
Actually, I was only in Madison Township for my junior and senior year in high school. My parents moved from Queens, New York to Old Bridge, New Jersey. And I picked up my schooling when I moved there.
No, I thought we were together for all 6 years.
Well, that's because we were so friendly to each other that it seemed like it was a long time, but it was very short, actually.
Oh, okay. So when you moved into Old Bridge, what was it like moving into what we call this, or what you guys call the sticks from the city, the big city?
Well, New York City was a little bit different than Old Bridge. First of all, the teaching methods were a little bit different. They had regents tests that we had to take. But when I moved to Old Bridge, I met all great people in my class. I was on the soccer team, so I was part of the sports at the school, and met a lot of people. The great people.
We had, just so everyone knows, we had close to 500 people in our graduating class, and pretty much everybody in that class knew everybody. It wasn't like everybody was standoffish and we only knew a few people in our closest circle. We were all pretty much together, and I think that was because they tried to end our class and separate it in our junior year, and we kind of fought to stay together. So it was a special class for us when we reached our senior year.
It was a special class from that standpoint, and coming into the school as a junior in high school, I had made a lot of friends very quickly, and it felt like there was a seamless transition. It was very. I enjoyed being at Old Bridge.
What were some of your memories of your time in Old Bridge?
Well, I spent 27 years in Old Bridge from the time I moved there until the time that I moved to Burlington, New Jersey. But joining the fire company, knowing all the people from the fire company and the people that I went to school with, that was my growing up years. I mean, even though I was 15 when I moved to Old Bridge, that's where I did all my growing up. I mean, the people that I met, all my friends on the block, playing football, it was a great atmosphere, met a lot of great people, and I totally enjoyed being in Old Bridge.
What fire company did you belong to?
Actually, I'm still a member of South Old Bridge Fire Company Engine 2 on Throckport.
Oh, very good. I was in Cheesequake for 4 years. I actually started when we were in high school. I was a junior fireman. Until I got married and moved out of town, then I didn't join another company.
Well, you started about the same time as my brother did. He was on 3 years before I was, and I found it playing. Actually, I joined their softball team, and after a couple of years, I got to know all the players, and they actually came up to me and says, "Well, you know us all. Why don't you become a firefighter?" I said, "Well, let me try it, see if I liked it." And 47 years later, I loved it.
That's terrific. So let's get into the service a little bit. That's one of the reasons why we wanted you here, was because we want to talk about veterans service and honor your service in town. And I know that you were in the Air Force. And how did you join up? Did you volunteer?
Well, when I joined, I was actually 17. It was about 6 months after we graduated high school. I wanted to have I wanted to fulfill a military obligation. My father was in the military. My uncles were in the military. I felt this calling to be in the military. So I joined the Air National Guard in February of 1970 and made a 25-year career out of it. So, yeah, I did both the college and the military at the same time.
Wow. And what was your job in the military?
I started out as a radio operator, which was an enlisted individual learning how to transmit messages over the radios. And after 10 years, I decided, well, I'm going to stay in the military, so I might as well go as far as I can. By that time, I had my bachelor's degree. And the position that I had in communications was going to become an officer position. Since I was already doing the job, I said, I'm qualified to do it. Let me go and put my application in. I put my application in. They accepted me. I went to OCS, was a radio operator. I was a communications officer for about 2 years before they changed my priority and I became a personnel officer, followed by a supply officer. And eventually, since I had graduated with a degree in finance, my original commander saw a position open for me in the budget office, and he took me under his wing, and I went into finance, and I retired as a major and the comptroller of the unit, which is the equivalent to the chief financial officer.
Wow. What was it like when you went to OCS? It must have been quite a change from civilian life to get into the.
Well, I had been in the military for 10 years by that point, so I was acclimated to military. When I went to OCS, it was a Air National Guard OCS program in Tennessee, and their philosophy was to take a prior service person, have them room with a non-prior service person to give them the background of how to act in the military and give them guidance. And I was very fortunate. I had a great roommate who had no prior service, who eventually became a command pilot on a C-130 cargo plane. And he actually retired at a higher rank than I did. So it was very, very good. Good career.
So you made a lot of good friends in the Air Force?
I still talk to a lot of people that I work with in the Air Force, and I've been out since 1995.
Do you get together for reunions or anything?
Well, it was kind of difficult because I was working a civilian job, and most of the reunions were during the day because they had retired by that point, and they were having luncheons and meetings, and I was still working. So it was kind of difficult to do that.
Are there any kind of stories that you can share with us of your time in the Air Force? Anything that sticks out in your mind?
Well, I think the story that really I'll remember for the rest of my life is there was a number of firefighters in South Old Bridge that were in the Air National Guard the same time I was. And obviously during Desert Shield and Desert Storm, it was a big call up for National Guardsmen. I was in a position where they really didn't need financial people to go over to what they call the sandbox, but they were in a position where they went over. And, you have that remorse feeling that I should have gone with them because I had all this training I could have used. But, they did their job. They came back safely. And, just being in the military with them and the brotherhood, and it was really good.
Did you have any difficulties adjusting back to civilian life when you were done with the military?
Well, I was a civilian. I was a guardsman, so I was really a civilian, and military 2 days a week, 2 days a month, and 3 weeks during the year sometime. So I was really a civilian that was also in the military. So I didn't have that much of a transition because I really wasn't never on active duty.
Mm-hmm.
But since I was home all the time, I still had that feeling with the military and the civilian world, both. It was very easy.
So were you working a civilian job at the same time?
Yes, I was.
And what were you doing?
For the first 20 years, I was a financial manager in companies. I worked for Bamberger's. I worked for Macy's. A lot of it was in the retail end of it. Then I went to a manufacturing company, and I got out of the financial world, civilian-wise, and went into working for a police department. I was actually an analyst working for a police department.
In New Jersey?
Yes, in Burlington, New Jersey.
Oh.
My little puppy. He likes
to be heard from too.
I did have the opportunity because I had the background in the fire service. Once I decided that I was going to change my career out of finance, I actually became a 911 operator, which, I was always the one who was getting dispatched to go to the calls. But now I was able to find out what happens when the person calls and needs help, what happens from that end. So I had the complete background from the time the call comes in to the time that we respond to the emergency. It was a great career.
What was the training like for that?
It was actually a 911 operator training class, and you had to learn how to operate the equipment that they had, how to talk on the radio, how to dispatch fire, first aid, and EMS. Also, we had to be EMS certified for dispatch. We had to know how to perform certain functions when we had to talk to individuals, had to give them guidance until EMS arrived.
Did your Air Force training help you out in any of that? Was there anything you learned in the Air Force that you already knew by the time you got to the training? Not
so much on the specifics of the job, but talking on the radio, that was part of my original military training. Talking on the radio in the fire department, talking to headquarters and talking to other firefighters, that was a good basis for going into 911 operation.
Tell me a bit about what it was like growing up and living in Old Bridge. You lived in Old Bridge after you graduated from high school for a while.
I did.
Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, that was, it was great growing up in Old Bridge. Like I said, I was in the fire department in Old Bridge. I coached soccer in Old Bridge. It was just meeting everybody from the mayor of the town all the way up to all the people that were working in the stores. It was a great experience growing up in Old Bridge.
What part of Old Bridge did you live in? Were you in a development?
I lived in Sayerwood South.
Sayerwood South.
Place. And, I was growing up with people from all age groups, all different graduating classes. My friends on the block were graduating 1970, 72. So I was friends with a lot of the different classes.
So Old Bridge House number 2 is the one right on Throckmorton.
Yes,
right?
That's the one right on Throckmorton.
So that's the one you belong to.
Yes.
Okay. And is that where after you graduated high school, did you have a house there in
well, my parents lived in Old Bridge until 1980. Once they retired, moved to Florida. I was old enough to live on my own. So 4 of the firefighters and myself rented a house, which appropriately we couldn't call it the Animal House because that was not original, but we called it the zoo. Just think of 5 firefighters living together and the environment that we lived in. It was great. Once that alarm went off, it was just the house empty because we were all going to the fire. But, just growing up in my 20s and living in Old Bridge, it was great. It was a lot of fun. Being in the fire department, I met a lot of people.
What year did you join the fire department?
1976.
Okay, so you missed some of the big ones that were in town. When the Grand Union went up and the Blackstone lumberyard.
Yeah, I was. That was before my time, but I remember the Edison pipeline very well. That was one of the big ones that we were involved with. A lot of big, obviously, all the brush fires that we've had over the years.
So I was going to say a lot of big forest fires out in South Old Bridge.
Oh, I spent many weeks fighting fires out in the woods.
Is there any other thing that you can think of that we haven't talked about yet?
Well, when I first moved to Old Bridge, Route 9 was just a 2-lane road. I'm sure you remember that.
Yes.
Eventually, it became a 6-lane highway, and was it an 8-lane superhighway now? Just the transition of seeing Old Bridge expand the way it did. All those places that we used to have brush fires are now developed, and there's lots of developments all over Old Bridge, South Old Bridge, Madison Park, Cheesequake. It's all been developed. So
I remember when Saywood South was all farmland.
Yes.
When I remember there, when it was being built.
Yeah, when I moved there, we still had the apple orchard in the middle of development, and it was very interesting being there.
I don't know if you remember, but there was a oval raceway in Browntown, and one summer while Saywood South was being built, they had a rodeo at the raceway, and 2 Brahma bulls escaped. So all the traffic, I was in the car, my mother was driving. All the traffic was detoured through Saywood South, which wasn't Saywood South yet. It was just dirt roads. Because they didn't know where these bulls had gone.
There's a lot of stories about that oval. When I moved there, they were still racing midgets. So it was still being used. But after it went to disuse, that's when the chicken farms were built. They built another development where the chicken farms are. It was not quite the same. The fire department used to be responsible for the parking of the vehicles at the racetrack. So yeah, we have quite a history with that.
Yeah, I didn't know that. I'm not even sure whose territory that was, whether that was Cheesequake or South Old Bridge. I guess it's South Old Bridge, huh?
It was South Old Bridge, yes.
Okay.
One last note before we go. You see the hat that I'm wearing? It's the Strategic Air Command. We were one of the few Air National Guard units in the United States that were part of Strategic Air Command, and we're pretty proud of that.
As you should be. Well, Mike, I'm very glad that you stopped by to chat with us today, and I thank you for your service. You've done a tremendous job. I've known you for a long time, and thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Sam, for the opportunity. And Jeff, I appreciate the opportunity to be interviewed. And this is for all those members of the military, past, present, and future.
And hopefully we'll talk again.
I'm looking forward to that, Sam.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Take care.